The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. And let's connect you today with Senator John Edwards. Good to see you, sir.
Delighted to be here, Woody. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about your background, training, and experience. I bet a lot of people don't know that you were once the state high school pole vaulting champion.
That's right. That's exactly right. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I pole vaulted in high school and college.
Great. And you went to Patrick Henry High School, I believe?
Patrick Henry High School.
Right. And where did you go to college?
I went to Princeton University.
Okay. And then I believe you studied theology for a while.
I did. I spent a year at Union Theological Seminary in New York City on a Rockefeller Fellowship, and then went to law school at the University of Virginia.
Great. And you represent the city of Roanoke and the surrounding areas.
Roanoke, part of Roanoke County, and about 80% of Montgomery County, and all of Giles County.
And you had experience as a local elected official at one time.
I was vice mayor of the city of Roanoke for a time, right before I was elected to the state senate.
Great. So that background, training, and experience brings a lot to bear here in the state senate.
Well, I was United States Attorney for the Western District of Virginia under President Carter. So that gives me some experience in the criminal law arena as well, and I was a JAG officer in the Marine Corps as well.
Great, great. Tell us a little bit about the importance of rail transportation in the city of Roanoke and the region.
You know, Roanoke wouldn't exist but for the railroad in the early 1880s when the North-South Railroad, the Shenandoah Valley Railroad, and the East-West Railroad, I guess it was called the Tennessee-Virginia Railroad, hooked together in what was known then as Big Lick. And so it became a town and then a city rapidly, and it grew magically, and Roanoke was known as the Magic City for a while. But since the late 70s, we have not had rail passenger transportation, which is kind of ironic given the fact that Roanoke is a railroad community. And hopefully we can bring it back in the next 2 or 3 years. I've been working on that, as you know, and I was delighted that we got the transportation package passed last year. I was delighted that the governor came to Roanoke in August to sign an agreement among City of Roanoke, Amtrak, the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and Norfolk Southern. And so this will assure that we will have rail passenger transportation, and the outgoing governor signed an agreement with Norfolk Southern to provide $92.7 million to expand and improve the railroad line between Roanoke and Lynchburg to make sure you can have both freight and rail passengers so they don't get in the way of each other. So the improvements are going on as we speak, and I'm hoping, as I say, in the next 2 or 3 years, we should have an Amtrak train starting in Roanoke, going all the way to Boston, and hopefully later from Roanoke on to Radford. It's about a 12, 13-hour trip. You can same seat traffic from Roanoke to Boston through, of course, Washington, Philadelphia, New York, and so forth. And already, as you know, we have a bus that we started. I got the funding back in 2011, and you can go to the Civic Center in Roanoke, put your car there, park it there for as long as you want, take the bus from Roanoke to Lynchburg, and it connects directly with the new train that's Tim Kaine got it started back in '09, the new Amtrak train that goes from Lynchburg all the way to Boston. Many people have used it. It's very popular. It's full most of the time, and getting that bus was instrumental in showing Amtrak there's a market, an important market in Western Virginia for Amtrak. So one step at a time, and we're almost there.
So was that the Smartway Connector bus? It
was. The Smartway Connector bus. It leaves at 10 minutes to 6 in the morning to catch the 7:38 train out of Lynchburg. You can go to Washington, I think, at like 11:20 in the morning, in New York about 2:20, and then on up to Boston later on in the afternoon. People who've taken it tell me they absolutely love it. And it's a great way to travel. You can use your cell phone, use your laptop, you can read, take a nap, whatever you want to do, and people who've taken it are thrilled that now you can go from Roanoke to all up and down the Eastern Corridor by starting with the bus in Roanoke. And as I say, in 2 or 3 years we'll get Amtrak here.
Great. And the O. Winston Link Museum is a real historical repository there about railroads.
Well, O. Winston Link was, the photographer for the railroad in the late 40s and early 60s. He took mostly black and white pictures of the old trains that were run by diesel, and the pictures are just really classic pictures. So we're delighted to have the repository of O. Winston Link's photographs at the Link Museum, which, by the way, as you probably know, was the rail passenger station for many years up until the time it closed.
Now, you've also been active on the environmental in environmental issues as well. I think you were the 2013 Sierra Club Legislator of the Year.
That's right. That's right. I had a bill passed last year, which is called a power purchase agreement. It allows individuals to have, or companies to have, solar energy and sell the solar energy to the, in this case, Dominion. Dominion Power Company has decided to go forward with an RFP, they call it a request for proposals, to provide on a pilot basis solar energy from smaller plants that can sell to Dominion. So we hope that that will encourage solar energy throughout the Commonwealth. This is something we need to do in the long run, and that's just one step.
Back to transportation for a moment. The transportation funding bill passed last year. It'll be implemented over the next number of years, but there are already attempts to do away with some of the more unpopular provisions, not the least of which relates to a tax on hybrid vehicles. Right. It appears that that's going to occur.
It probably will. It was $64, I believe,
right,
per year if you have a hybrid vehicle. The theory being you're not paying as much with regard to the gas tax, or although you're still paying the sales tax, which was expanded to apply to transportation. But the hybrid tax, people thought didn't make sense, because the federal government's giving you a tax break to buy a hybrid car, and the state is taxing you to have a hybrid car. So that seemed to be unpopular.
Now, there's also a provision that would provide funding contingent upon the federal government passing a law that would allow the states to tax out-of-state retail internet sales. What's happening with that?
Well, it looks like Congress is not going to pass that Marketplace Equity Act, which would provide that the states can tax internet sales that don't originate or in their own state. There's a Supreme Court decision going way back that says the states cannot tax internet sales unless the plant is the plant where it's coming from is in your state. Congress has to fix that, and it's not clear that Congress is going to fix it. That ties into the transportation, and that if Congress doesn't do it by a certain time, I think it's next January, then the wholesale price of gasoline will go up a little bit to make up that difference. Otherwise, the federal monies from that tax will come to the states.
How's the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center doing?
Oh, it's doing terrific. The Corporate Research Center is we set it up 20-some years ago, and several years ago I had a bill to expand and double the size of the Corporate Research Center. It's a tremendous, it's going like great gangbusters. It's using the technology and the innovations at the research at Virginia Tech and turning it into commercial use. The inventions at Virginia Tech are now being used at the Corporate Research Center to sell the products in a commercial way, and that's the whole idea. In the future, where so much of our job creation, which comes from innovation, is coming from the innovation at research centers like Virginia Tech, and so this is very important to the economy of our region.
And of course, that goes hand in hand with some legislation you have dealing with workforce development.
Absolutely. The community colleges have been given the assignment of providing workforce training so that people have the skills to do the kinds of jobs in the economy. 2/3 of the jobs in the future, I'm told, will require some kind of skill that the community colleges can provide. You don't necessarily have to have a bachelor's degree, but an associate's degree from the community college is becoming even more important. And so we're encouraging people to go to the community colleges to provide to receive those kinds of skills and that kind of training so that they can get the jobs in the economy. You know, today, because of the way the economy has changed, a person really can't pull themselves out of poverty unless they have some kind of skill, some kind of training. Otherwise, there aren't any jobs out there.
Now, what about those high school students who don't want to either go to junior college or to our institutions of higher learning? Is there a need to focus on something else like vocational training?
We really do. There are too many that are not graduating from high school or graduate from high school and not going into college. We need to improve the programs for career and vocational schools. There are still jobs there, but again, you need to have those kinds of skills, some kind of skill.
Tell us a little bit more about the junior colleges in the area that you represent. I believe Virginia Western Community College is one. We have a program 2+2 there. You have tuition assistance grants. Tell us about the importance of those.
Well, Virginia Western in the city of Roanoke, and of course then there's the New River Community College up in Dublin. We have several programs. One in the Roanoke area, a dual enrollment program where you can, in high school, you can take community college courses and get credit at the community college. The other program we have statewide is that if you're at the community college, your first year, if you take the right courses and apply to a four-year school, your tuition at the four-year school, when you get there, your third and fourth year of college, if you take the right courses, make the right grades, your tuition will be reduced. And the idea is to encourage people to go to community college to get the training they need and then go on to the four-year schools. It's cheaper for the Commonwealth and it's less expensive for the student as well.
One of the things that defrays the cost of college education is the fact that we have a number of out-of-state students who pay much higher tuition than residents of the state. It's kind of hard to maintain that balance. We want to make sure we have enough of our students in state who are attending the UVAs or the Virginia Techs of the world, but we don't want to discourage those out-of-state students.
Well, I think having out-of-state students, 30% say, is good. It's good for diversity reasons, but also they pay a lot more in tuition, and therefore they help to pay the costs and defray the costs of the tuition for our undergraduate students from Virginia. One of the things that's bothered me so much, tuition has doubled approximately in the last 10 years, and this is an impediment to student ambitions and opportunities. And I was reading where students, when they graduate from college, have such high debt. In fact, there's more student debt nationwide, so in the trillions, than there is credit card debt. That's a staggering figure. So we as a Commonwealth and as a country are not doing a very good job of keeping the cost of tuition down. I have a bill this year I put in. It's based on an organ that is called Pay Forward, Pay Back. You can pay your tuition later when you graduate based on a percentage of your income. We're trying to figure out a way to make that work. We're studying it right now. But the high cost of tuition is a real problem.
Now, the foundation is laid at K through 12, but I know that you have a great deal of interest in early childhood education.
Pre-K, 4-year-old. All the studies show that students who get pre-K do better in life. They do better in their school. They do better in terms of not getting involved with the criminal justice system. They make more money. The whole list of things that provides more success for students is often laid at the 4-year-old level of preschool. They say 90% of a brain is formed by the age of 5, and so it's important that they get early learning, appropriate education at the parents' consent and agreement. And so I'm hoping to expand that. I've got a bill in now to have, in fact, a study and a bill to try to expand pre-K because it's so important to students.
Now, I understand that some of the negative predictors, for example, if a child can't read by the 3rd grade, that's a predictor that the state sometimes use to determine whether to build new correctional facilities.
Well, that's really true. Again, the sooner a child gets the basics at the appropriate type of education for a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, and so forth, the sooner the better. And if they can't read by third grade, there's a real problem. They say you learn until age of third grade, you're taught to read, and then you read to learn after the third grade. So getting that early reading skills is really important to future education.
Now, there's been a lot of talk so far this session about the need to reform the standards of learning. I assume that you hear from teachers and parents
Sure.
and maybe some students about that.
Well, I've been critical of we've always had standards of learning, but it's the assessments, the tests, the high-stakes tests that you have to pass a test in order to advance to the next level or to graduate. And because it's so important, teachers tend to teach to the test. And then students tend to crowd out electives in order to take only those courses that are involved in the SOL assessment. So I thought for a long time we need to reform the SOLs, and I think there are a number of bills this year. In fact, I have a bill to try to reform the SOL, something I've been really pushing for a long time.
So as I understand it, there are about 34 tests between kindergarten and high school. We want to reduce the number of tests.
We over-test kids. I mean, you learn by the learning process. You have to have tests periodically to see how people are doing, and also to see if they're not making the grade, if they're not learning. We need to test them periodically, but let's not put these single kind of high-stakes tests up front and crowd out electives, crowd out things that are important, and make life miserable. The students don't like it, the teachers don't like it, the parents don't like it, the superintendents don't like it. I don't know why we've had it like this for so long. It's been a crying need to reform the SOLs for a long, long time.
And we need to focus more instead of rote memorization on critical thinking.
That's right. It's not, what you can memorize in a hurry and then forget. It's whether or not you can two things. One, can you think critically? Can you solve problems? And the other thing is the love of learning. We need to instill in children the love of learning, because if you love to learn, you are a lifelong learner.
Now, one of the things many people apparently don't love at the local school district level is legislation that passed last year that allows the state now to take over failing schools, and also a piece of legislation to grade schools from A to F.
No, that made no sense. And I was opposed. I think it's unconstitutional. We'll see what the courts say. The state taking over schools. I mean, who's to say the state can do it better? But the Constitution says the locality should run the school systems.
Great. And we always have the perennial bill to allow those children who are homeschooled by their parents to participate in high school athletic activities.
That's always quite contentious. Yeah, it really is. I think we should, if you want to go to be homeschooled, that's fine. But it's very difficult to then also say, well, you should be able to take selectively courses in the public schools. It's really hard to make that work.
And then allowing school districts the discretion to determine when they actually begin the school year is another important.
That's a big, we're trying to, because of the Roanoke area, because of the fact of the dual enrollment program with the community colleges, we're trying to align the public school curriculum of start time with the community college start time. And we're doing some other things in Roanoke too.
Yeah, like the Roanoke Higher Education Center. Talk to us about that.
We put in a bill amendment to add $3 million to expand the Culinary Arts Institute at the Roanoke Higher Education Center. Virginia Western operates it. It's been very successful. We started it in 2008, so we're hoping to add a building at the Culinary Arts Institute to allow for the expansion of that program. And so we're making a lot of progress. Another thing that's happening in Roanoke that's very exciting is the Research Institute, that Virginia Tech Carilion Research Institute, and of course the School of Medicine. The School of Medicine will be graduating its first class this year.
Its first class?
First class of 4, about 40, 42 students per class, and the resumes of those students are outstanding. I mean, they could have gone anywhere, and we're lucky to get them here in the Roanoke Valley. It's a very exciting School of Medicine program. But in addition, there's a research institute, Virginia Tech Carilion Research Institute. They're doing nationally recognized research on the brain and neurology. They brought in a gentleman, Michael Friedlander from Houston, a PhD, who has brought in 160 research scientists to Roanoke to work at the Virginia Tech of Carilion Research Institute. The work they're doing, as I say, is nationally ranked. It's extremely important. They're studying things like PTSD and autism, Parkinson's disease, concussions, all sorts of very important things that are going to have a tremendous impact nationally. So we're very excited about that research institute.
So science.
I've got an amendment in to add $1 million to that so they can do further work with regard to the whole field of neurology.
So all that fits into a debate we're having in the general session here, and that's on health care. Give us the pros and cons on what's going on.
We've got to expand Medicaid. If we don't, here's what happens. Under the federal laws, the indigent care funding that the hospitals receive is going to go away. And it was to be replaced by the expansion of Medicaid. So if we don't expand Medicaid, the hospitals are really going to be hurt. And if they expand Medicaid, the hospitals will be helped dramatically and in a very important way. All the hospital administrators I've talked to are very supportive of expanding Medicaid. And think about it this way. For the first 3 years, the federal government will pay 100% of the expansion of Medicaid, about $2.1 billion to Virginia to expand Medicaid. And that would hopefully expand Medicaid up to 400,000 new people. People that do not now have a primary care physician. When they go to the emergency rooms, nobody pays for it. And the costs are shifted to private pay insurance companies. You're paying a hidden premium in your health care insurance in order to cover the uninsured. People don't realize that. That hopefully would go away. In addition to the $2 billion covering 400,000 new people, it would create, estimated to be about 30,000 new jobs. And a lot of those jobs ought to be in the Roanoke region. We have Carilion, which is a big driver of the economy. We have HCA Lewis Gale, which is another major driver to the economy, and of course Virginia Tech, huge driver to the economy. And Medicaid expansion it can only be a good thing for the Roanoke Valley in terms of job creation, in terms of covering those that don't have any health care, in terms of keeping your health insurance premium from continuing to go up. And so to me it's a no-brainer. And I think it's the top thing this year in the General Assembly to get Medicaid expanded.
Now, we're having this debate because the Supreme Court, in upholding the Affordable Care Act, gave the states the discretion to determine Medicaid expansion. As I understand it, about half the states have, half the states have not.
That's about right. About 25 or more have already expanded, including states that have Republican governors. And I'm hoping that Virginia will see fit. The Senate's all been in favor of expanding Medicaid all along. Of course, the governor is pushing it as his top priority, and the question is getting the House Republicans to go along with it. A study just recently showed that if Virginia does expand Medicaid, that we would benefit by about $1 billion over 10 years. I mean, how do you turn that down? And we've already lost about $5 million a day since the 1st of January this year in not taking Medicaid funding.
The Medicaid Reform Commission says we still need to study this. Its charter lasts through 2016. You mentioned that the governor now wants that commission to make up its mind by the end of this session, or allow him to make that decision.
That's right. That's right. He's pushing, and I think there's a way to do it. Let's hope so. But this is probably going to drag on for some time.
Another huge issue as a result of a tragedy suffered by one of your colleagues is mental health reform.
Right.
You've been involved in that issue for some time. We had the tragedy several years ago at Virginia Tech.
Exactly.
Talk to us about the needs there.
Well, we thought we'd more or less fixed it. I co-chaired a subcommittee in the Senate on mental health reform in 2008. We did a lot. Governor Kane gave us $42 million new dollars for the budget, which we thought we'd pretty well solve the problem. In 2009, we did some fixes as well. What happened with Senator Deeds' family and his son is truly tragic and completely unnecessary. Had the reforms remained in place in terms of they were going to have a website they were supposed to have established a website as where are the beds, so they could easily find empty beds. There were beds available. They didn't have them. They made a few phone calls, and had the website been in place, presumably this would not have happened. In addition, we've lost most of that $42 million because of the economy and because of priorities. The outgoing governor recommended $38 million of new money. That's important. So we need to make sure we solve the problem in a way that we don't fall back. I mean, you know, Senator Deeds was on 60 Minutes. He did a wonderful job explaining, and of course the 60 Minutes show went on about this is not unique to Virginia either. But it was a tragedy that was unnecessary. We feel for Senator Deeds and his family and anyone in that situation. It should not have fallen through the cracks, and it was a huge mistake on the part of the Commonwealth of Virginia to allow that to happen. So
a lot more resources are needed to deal with this issue, but also right. Some reforms in terms of how long an individual who may be a threat to himself or others.
There are a number of dangers. We set it up, I remember in 2008 for 6 hours because the sheriffs and others that have to transport people said we can't have a deputy available for that length of time. There are other things that have to be done, so we kind of compromise, frankly, for bureaucratic reasons, and it's understandable, but, you know, sometimes 6 hours is plenty, sometimes it's not. And so we need to expand the time to do the assessments before somebody is mandatorily released, and we need to have beds when people are assessed, like Senator Deeds' son was assessed as needing a bed, as being a danger to himself or others, and the beds weren't there, and so we saw what happened, and it's just a tragic situation that, as I say, in my opinion, was completely preventable.
Got about a minute left, but the other big ticket item on the agenda is ethics reform. We have a former governor, unfortunately, who's been indicted, who's going to be tried criminally. What needs to be done in this general session?
Well, what's happened to Governor McDonald is truly tragic, and it's tragic for Virginia, as well as to him and his family and his friends. We need to put some clamps on this. Virginia has loose ethics laws, as everybody knows. To some extent, you really can't legislate character and ethics. You'll always find ways to get around whatever is in place. But we do need to be more transparent. We need to put some limitations. I've had a bill that would set up an ethics advisory panel that set forth guidelines, make recommendations for future legislation, and advise legislators as what you can and cannot do, and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Sometimes they're so loose, people not sure what should be reported and what shouldn't be reported. There's a lot of loose ends there.
Good. We'll have to leave it there. Good luck. Thank you for being here, Senator John Edwards.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Cox Communications, connecting Virginians to their government. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.